One distinctive characteristic of Brussels is that many of the conversations that one can hear in the streets and cafes of the city take place in many different languages. As the capital of the European Union, it is not surprising to hear conversations in languages from all over Europe. One Friday, a few weeks ago, late in the evening, in the neighborhood where I live, I heard a beautiful language. I decided to record it. Later in this episode, I will reveal its meaning, but for now, listen carefully to every sound of this short recording and try to imagine what is being said. These are not random sounds. They are deliberate and they carry meaning. Scientists are still trying to decipher the forms of communication in the bird kingdom, but there is a broader meaning that people are increasingly becoming aware of, as this episode will reveal. A century ago, one Belgian woman understood long before most people of her time what today is now becoming mainstream, and I will share her inspiring story later in this episode. I'm Sean O'Kernin, and this is Letter from Brussels, written for the members of the Liberal Mayors Network and any other interested listeners, and brought to you by the Renew Europe group in the European Committee of the Regions. With 24 official languages and numerous other regional languages widely spoken, communication between citizens of the European Union is a challenge. That is why, when a special effort is made somewhere to help Europeans learn each other's languages, it deserves a special mention. Last week, the President of the European Committee of the Regions, Apostolos Tzitzikostas, himself a fluent speaker of Greek, English and French, wrote a letter to the students of July2021, an Irish-language secondary school in County Cork, congratulating them for having won the National Think Languages Prize, during which they designed a range of activities to make language learning attractive and fun, from quizzes over the school intercom to food tasting, sports, and national dances, focusing on 7 different EU languages. In his letter of congratulations, President Tzitzikostas explained that investing time and effort into the study of languages is truly worth the effort, and that through knowledge of languages, Europeans can unlock the opportunities that the EU offers citizens to develop their full potential beyond national borders. To the pupils of July2021, Goardachas Ochri Agus Goneidi Liv, a heartfelt congratulations and good luck. The Committee of the Regions has established its own award, as we heard in episode 1 of this podcast, and the call for nominations opened up a few days ago. The Paweł Adamowicz Award will reward individuals or organizations that have been working at subnational level against intolerance, radicalization, hate speech, oppression, and xenophobia. The deadline for nominations is the 15th of September, and the winner will be announced in December. For more information, you can contact the Renew Europe Secretariat at the COR. An alarming example of intolerance took place only days before the COR opened the nominations period for the Adamowicz Award. On the 8th of June, the governing party of Hungary, Fidesz, included references to homosexuality in a law that was being discussed in the Hungarian parliament intended to combat pedophilia. The lumping together of sexual minorities who have suffered persecution for centuries with criminal pedophilia caused such outrage that 18 EU national governments signed a declaration denouncing the new Hungarian law as a blatant breach of the EU Charter of Fundamental Rights. A few days later, the COR in its plenary approved a report drafted by Jean-Luc Van Raas, a Brussels local councillor of the Liberal Open VLD party, which calls on the European Commission to withhold any EU funds to a member state that is found to be in breach of Article 2 of the treaty, which states that, amongst other values, the Union is founded on the values of respect for human dignity and the rights of persons belonging to minorities. During the plenary debates with European Commission Vice Presidents Maroš Šefčovič and Margarita Schinas on the future challenges for the EU and on the promotion of EU values in education, Renew Europe's first Vice President, Ulrika Landengren, of the Swedish Liberalerna Party, and Cork County Mayor Gillian Coughlan expressed their concern over the new Hungarian law and called on the Commission to encourage and help cities to declare themselves LGBTIQ Freedom cities, echoing the resolution of the European Parliament declaring the whole of the EU a freedom zone, and following the example of cities such as Lisbon, Quimper and Luxembourg. During a later debate with the European Commission Vice President Vera Jourova, Renew Europe President François de Coster stated, "We don't want an EU which is just a budget. We have built the EU to defend democracy, and thus, to attack the values of democracy is to attack democracy itself. We must not move away from the values that founded the EU, otherwise we run the risk of returning to the bleakest episodes of European history." Coming up in a few minutes, the story of the pioneering woman whose legacy lives on in the birds of Brussels. If I asked you to describe the typical sounds of a city, no doubt you would mention the sound of traffic. In a report approved by the COR plenary, drafted by Deputy Mayor of The Hague Robert van Asten of the Dutch Liberal D66 party, cities need to reduce carbon dioxide emissions from fossil fuel-based mobility. In other words, less combustion engine vehicles. The COVID pandemic and online working has made people's place of residence less dependent on their place of work. And therefore, in this report, the COR promotes the concept of the 15-minute city, where all things people need and many of the things they want are within a travel distance of 15 minutes. One effect that in some cities seems to have been triggered by the pandemic is a renewed desire to live in rural areas. This, however, is not the general trend observed everywhere, and the Vice President of the Spanish region of Castilla y León, Francisco Igea, of the Liberal Party Ciudadanos, sounded a grave warning during a debate on the future of Europe about the growing inequality between urban and rural areas. The more rural areas are allowed to empty, the less access they have to new technologies, and the more they are neglected when it comes to investment, then the more desperate citizens living in rural areas will become, posing a grave danger to our democracies. Another grave threat that has been overshadowed by the pandemic, but which has not gone away, is that of the climate emergency. Stepping Up Europe's 2030 Climate Ambition was the title of a report by the mayor of the French town of Autun, Vincent Chauvet, of the Modem Party, which was also approved at the plenary of the COR, and which will form the basis of a message to the next United Nations Climate Conference, stressing that achieving the urgent targets to reduce carbon dioxide emissions can only be done together with municipalities and regional authorities. Furthermore, because this is about the life of future generations, the COR calls on every municipality of at least 10,000 people to create youth parliaments so that the local youth can help shape their future adapting to climate change. One of the fronts in the fight against climate change is the preservation of biodiversity. According to the European Commission's first Foresight report, bird watching is key to detecting biodiversity loss in the environment, because birds can act as indicators of the health of the environment. Being close to or at the top of the food chain, they reflect changes in the ecosystem rather rapidly compared to other species. In general, a decrease in the number of birds means biodiversity loss and environmental stress. The square that is commonly known in Brussels as Place Rogier seems to be an ongoing experiment. Just 15 minutes walk to the north from the old historic center of the city, it seems that over the decades, architects, urban planners, and local authorities have considered Place Rogier to be a good place to install bold buildings and structures. It's a very different place to how it looked exactly a century ago. Today, the first thing that grabs your attention when you arrive at Place Rogier is the structure in the middle of it, which resembles a giant alien flying saucer that has just landed from outer space. Its purpose is not evident, but it offers a lot of shelter from the rain, and at its base there's a popular coffee shop. The second thing that grabs your attention is the noise. Traffic from all sorts of vehicles, construction work, police sirens, trains passing beneath your feet, people chatting, children playing and shouting. The third thing you notice is the lack of greenery. No plants, and barely a tree in sight. Place Rogier is therefore a very unlikely place to find anything connected with birds. Yet it is here that in the early 1920s, Antoinette, Thérèse, Marie, Guylaine de Smet de Neyer established the offices of the Belgian Royal League for the Protection of Birds. Antoinette, better known as Antonia, was born to an aristocratic family in the Flemish city of Ghent, 55 kilometers northwest of Place Rogier. Her mother was very active in animal protection societies, and Antonia took a particular interest in birds. In 1911, at the age of 36, she married a French aristocrat, became the Marchioness of Pierre, and went to live with her husband in central France, where she became active in the French League for the Protection of Birds. But she never forgot Belgium, and in 1922 she established the Belgian League, setting up office in the Hôtel des Boulevards on Place Rogier, just meters from the old Gare du Nord, the North Railway Station. On her many visits to Brussels, it was from this hotel, which was demolished in the late 1960s to build a large modern hotel, that she would run the administrative affairs of the League, chair General Assembly meetings, meet the staff and volunteers, request meetings with government ministers, and write letters to parliamentarians and other decision-makers in support of the cause to protect Belgium's birds. In 1923, she denounced a Belgian law which legalized bird trapping, the practice of catching wild birds often using cruel and lethal methods. In 1924, thanks to her, Belgium banned the blinding of chaffinch birds, an extremely cruel practice which consisted in sewing the eyelids of the birds together in the belief that this would make the birds sing more often. Antonia continued fighting to protect birds and other animals throughout her life. In 1948, at the age of 74, just months before she passed away, she represented the Belgian League at the international conference that established the International Union for the Conservation of Nature. There is no statue or plaque anywhere in Brussels honoring Antonia's work, her courage, her pioneering spirit, and her legacy. Next year will be the centenary of Antonia's initiative to set up the League. As they proudly announce on their website, for 99 years, the League has been doing what we must all now do to prevent the worst scenarios of climate change: protect biodiversity. 2022 would therefore be a perfect moment to inaugurate a monument to her. In the meantime, if you live in Brussels, or plan to visit when travel restrictions are lifted, Listen out for the birds chattering in their language throughout the city. In some ways, their lively presence is a perfect tribute to Antoinette Thérèse Marie Guylaine de Smet de Neyer, the Marchioness of Pierre. If you are enjoying this podcast, you can subscribe on most major podcast platforms, as well as on YouTube. If you can, do leave a review if you have a moment. It does help. And if you think others might enjoy this podcast, please don't hesitate to tell them about it. Thank you, and have a good summer.